then I'll just keep it at that.
Yes, I want to introduce like Baerbel and Gregorio, like just like in briefly, like Baerbel and Gregorio, they are like an associate professor and assistant professor in Angewandte, Vienna. It's my former university. Like Baerbel, like she has a lab, AFA, and she's working in Africa. And now in Damascus, we are collaborating with Baerbel and Gregorio in a new project, Damascus Dialogue. And also like focusing more or less, I mean, like also on the special intervention and how we can also do something for the community. And also like it's super nice. I mean, they will have like super nice lecture and it would be super useful. I mean, like for all of you, I mean, and they have super nice experiment. I didn't like explain super detail. I would like from you, I mean, like Baerbel and Gregorio, to introduce yourself to the other, and then you can start your lecture, please. Thank you. Thank you for your joining also.
Yeah, hello everyone, my name is Baerbel Mueller. I'm speaking to you from Vienna. As Siva mentioned, I'm happy and delighted to be connected to Damascus and Hamburg now. I think it would be best if I can share my screen immediately. Okay, let me. Okay, so I start talking a bit about my work before I go into presenting you a project. So I'm an architect based in Austria and in Ghana in West Africa, and I define my practice, Mag.Arch.Baerbel Mueller, as navigations in the field of architecture and urban research within diverse cultural contexts, with a focus on projects located on the African continent since the year 2002. I'm also, as Siva mentioned, the head of the Applied Foreign Affairs Lab at the Institute of Architecture of the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. And in different collaborations, both in my practice and in my teaching, I've been exploring questions of space, identity, architecture, culture, and nature, nourished by post-colonial discourses and translated into artistic works which are based on transcultural collaborations and applied research. In terms of how I would summarize my approach to architecture and spatial practices, most strikingly, I would say that to me, architecture is more a verb than a noun. This implies an aspiration to shift focus from the product to the process. I'm always more interested in the process than the result, which of course, after implementation, translates into an interest in the ongoing life of a completed project, whereby I would hardly ever define a project completed. There is no big difference in how I operate in my own practice to how I operate in my teaching. Therefore, describing the interest and methodology of AFAR, which I will briefly do now, stands equally for the work I do as NAFS. In 2011, I had the opportunity to establish the Applied Foreign Affairs Student Lab, which investigates spatial, infrastructural, environmental, and cultural phenomena in rural and urban Sub-Saharan Africa, and recently also in the Middle East. That's besides collaborating with Damascus now, we've been working in northern Iraq, in Erbil, between 2016 and 2020, just to shortly mention. And some of these projects are conceptualized as pure artistic research, others are based on design tasks or commissions, and both, most combine both. A lab or laboratory is per definition a facility that provides conditions in which experiments in a field of study may be performed, a place for testing, observing, and practicing. As the logic of a lab implies, as well as AFA's name, this is done in an applied manner. A purely academic, projective, and digital environment is what is left behind. From the very beginning of a new project, students are sent out to investigate, to test out in one-to-one scale, and to encounter spatial situations in the world outside of university. To come up with another body of knowledge, new approaches, and alternative solutions, one needs to engage oneself with the unknown. To achieve this, AFA's educational agenda is conceptualized as an alternating process of learning and unlearning. Given briefs are intensely interrogated and reflected upon, often reduced or shifted into other directions. This might happen on a conceptual level or a programmatic one, or is just manifested in the form of a change of scale. Obviously, to a certain extent, the respective project partner needs to be involved in this process. Invented or self-defined projects follow their own logic and are translated as artistic research, temporary interventions, or events. The specific what and how are always interdependent. On-site, the process of relating and making is conceptualized in a reactive and slowed-down manner. Conventional relationships between client, community, and architect, teacher, student, and collaborator, studio, university, and field are questioned or subverted. This approach might cause confusions for all parties involved and needs to be practiced, but allows for a flatter hierarchy and deeper engagement. Consequently, every process and outcome is generated by the individual commitments and specific constellations of all the actors involved. Thereby, conditions of uncertainty and fragility are, or need to be, deliberately embraced. And at best, spatial and programmatic hybrids of diverse ownership emerge. Okay, so here is like, you see some images of how our working situations look like. We are all living in a fragile age of ecological uncertainties and violent attacks. Nothing seems predictable. There is no truly safe, no truly private, no truly public space anywhere anymore. How can we position ourselves, act and react as architects, researchers, and educators to that, and at this moment in history? We need to redefine our profession. We need to develop new strategies in preventing, but also reacting on environmental and cultural challenges and destructions. Therefore, I would like to emphasize on two parameters which are most relevant to our profession and our time. I'm talking about the notion of context and of continuity. A lack of any deeper respecting and understanding of context causes most of the global as well as very local problems we are currently facing everywhere. I'm keen on truly contextual approaches in architecture and urban research, especially in challenging project environments. Context is the most relevant and beautiful parameter and backbone we have. The concept of context can serve and inspire us from the pragmatic to the poetic and beyond. Responding to the aspects of the environmental and climatic context in a project has a tradition in planning and architecture, but what is too often lacking is a consideration of the specific sociocultural context. It demands sharp analysis and creative engagement in order to come up with deep and contemporary readings of the specific sociocultural context of a project. Further, the claim of a culturally contextual spatial practice demands profound and innovative translations of the past and present identity of a place while projecting its future. It requires the exact opposite of a tabula rasa attitude. I think we all share this interest in environments such as Damascus or Samarkand as well. And as we all know, issues of cultural identity and representation are highly debated and complex topics. Thereby, a way forward might be to read a context or city and its emblematic history, not only through its monuments, museums, and statues, but through its vulnerability, through all things that are living and evolving every day. Quoting the Congolese artist Faustoline Kula, it's about finding a way to talk to the city from its most fragile part. To do so, one needs to creatively engage with local communities and individuals and to work in an inclusive manner. Such approaches apply the necessity to work in a reactive and slowed down mode and with continuity. And the project which I will present to you now strongly relies on these two parameters with a truly contextual approach and continuous engagement with the place and the community. I started working in Gorbeliga, a remote village in northern Ghana, 11 years ago. Back then, I was commissioned by an Austrian Ghanaian NGO, which is also intensely involved in the current market project, which I will intensely present in a minute. I was invited to actively participate in defining a holistic project brief, to evaluate a site, to generate a master plan, and to design facilities on an architectural scale. My approach at that time was to come up with typological and material solutions that strongly relate to the local settlement pattern, the remote rural context, and locally available construction materials. The compound structures I designed were built to house orphans, to accommodate the employees of the NGO, and to provide vocational trainings for adult villages. But it was also important to create sustainable infrastructure, such as the provision of drinking water through solar-powered pumping systems, the planting of trees and a vegetable garden, and other infrastructural facilities which evolved over the years. I titled that project My Home, My Bed, My Mango Tree. After the beginning, around the beginning of 2011, Guaboliga's chief asked me to work on a master plan for his growing village. I thought it would be a wonderful task for a team of students to project future scenarios for Guaboliga, also knowing that an experimental approach would be beneficial. And I formed an interdisciplinary team of 6 students of architecture, landscape design, and water management. These students came from the University of Applied Arts and also from Hochschule, which is their University for Environmental Studies in Vienna. Following a research phase in Vienna, we spent all of February 2012 on site. As a first step, the group extensively mapped the physiognomy of the village. Based on the local housing typology and farming culture, potential growth patterns were designed and dynamic growth parameters were defined. Guaboliga's founding myth, the well by the thorn tree, served as a conceptual starting point for coming up with contextual but novel spatial and programmatic scenarios. This environmental and infrastructural approach was identified as a way of avoiding the kind of modernistic master planning that is favored by authorities in the region and is generally associated with development. Further, it turned out to be more relevant to generate an open space policy as opposed to a housing pattern in a context in which the design and realization of living space naturally lies in the hands of the villagers themselves. Dry season gardens, a green belt that blends into the marketplace, and connecting green arteries together create a kind of multi-performative network that has a spatial, economic, and climatic impact on the rural fabric. On a macro as well as micro scale, seasonally changing wind directions were taken as a starting point to come up with an evolutionary growth plan for housing. Infrastructural nodes were served as initial punctures that would allow future housing clusters to evolve. Only a set of reactive rules was spatially defined in order to secure the desired density of built structures in relation to in-between space. Half a year later, part of the team returned to Guaboliga to implement the Greenbelt project as a first step towards improving the climatic and ecological situation of the village, and to create a maximal impact with minimal means. The 7-hectare Greenbelt land was designated by the chief as a no-building zone, and 150 trees were acquired from several nurseries, distributed on the land in strategic positions and planted as a communal event. The community's enthusiasm for the project came from an awareness of the climatic and ecological benefits that this green heart as a kind of catalyst would have for the village in the long term. Due to its very nature, the Greenbelt has been an ongoing project which has been monitored by the landscape architect of the team. The growth plan has been used by the chief and the community of Guaboliga to make town-level decisions ever since. Summing it up, key elements of the growth plan, such as the Guaboliga Greenbelt, a solar-powered community water system, and the new Guaboliga market have been realized by AFA in collaboration with the local NGO Birkhäuser, the chief and local and international experts from 2012 up until today. In 2017, AFA was commissioned to come up with a design for a new market for Guaboliga. The demand for a physical intervention on the existing bear marketplace emerged from an economic prospect based on successful adult training programs run by our partnering NGO and the chief's ambitions for a thriving market. This would prevent villages from going to other markets to sell their products and spend their money. Based on academic and field research done in 2018, A team of students designed an iconic modular market structure that was aimed at attracting traders to the remote town and strengthening the socio-economic performance of the farming community. Thereby, the new Głobuliga market was developed not only as a piece of infrastructure, but also with visions for the town's urban and commercial growth in mind. The design comprises a floorscape and roofscape that respond to given programmatic, climatic, and urban parameters, and includes an integrated water source, furniture, display options to be appropriated, and a market shop for locally made products that evokes the form of the traditional grain silos in the region. The team opted for cellular geometry for the floorscape and roofscape that respond to urban situations and future expansions of the market. The design innovates by bringing ideas of modular growth and appropriation to a market through ambitious form, higher quality and robust materiality, and novel construction techniques. The construction phase started in early 2019 and the market opened in August 2019. Since its opening, the market has been attracting a wide variety of sellers and services to the center of Głobuliga. The market is especially busy on market days, which occur every 3 days. With its platform, roofs, shop, water source, and seating area, the project marks an iconic renewal of the market life in Głobuliga and has led to an increase in trade activities, attracting traders from all over the region. On these days, the market platform is filled with women and men selling foodstuff and necessities bought in larger towns, as well as locally produced farming products and crafts. Service providers such as hairdressers, barbers, seamstresses, and food hawkers add to the liveliness of the market and attract people from Głobuliga and the surrounding towns. The market has been a huge success and is quickly growing. Additional extension zones surrounding the market platform were opened in March 2020. These extension zones allow for the setting up of informal scenarios and include pylons that can be appropriated by sellers for display or shade. By providing an attractive trade environment in this rural context, especially for women, the market counters migration from rural to urban parts of Ghana. I want to talk a bit about the design and realization process now. So as I mentioned, the project started in Vienna, and that was in December 2017 with a team of 6 students of architecture. The first intervention I assigned was to visit a market of one's own choice individually, with the task of buying a kilo of oranges there and notating this transaction of selling and buying. Arriving in Ghana, the team mapped a large number of plant and grown markets with regards to their spatial and dynamic characteristics. Infrastructure and programmatic situations were analyzed in terms of urban planning, zoning, and architecture. Selected markets were visited in Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, and Bolgatanga, with specific tasks to map and understand those markets' temporal and spatial dynamics. In Głobuliga itself, the investigation started with conversations with the chief and the village authorities, followed by presentations of initial conceptual ideas. Interviews with market women, shopkeepers, and farmers were done in order to understand their selling strategies, the challenges they face by not having a shaded or formalized place to sell, and their respective visions for a future market life in Głobuliga. Informed by all these encounters and other spatial parameters, the team developed a concept for the new Głobuliga market, starting from an urban scale with a focus on dynamic factors and potential zonings based on circulation patterns. It was identified that the then existing marketplace, which you see on the top left photo, like here, and the future market was then planned here. Started from an urban scale with a focus on dynamic factors and potential zoning based on circulation patterns. It was identified that the then existing marketplace would become too small for circulation of people, goods, and vehicles on a longer term basis. Therefore, a relocation was proposed. To get a better feeling for scale, including the human body, outlining exercises and examinations on a one-to-one scale took place. An initial zoning plan was presented to the community on site, whereby the relocation proposal was heavily discussed and evaluated. From then onward, an intensive design phase followed in Vienna. 4 months later, the team presented an iconic market design to representatives from Globalliga and board members of the NGO in a gathering at our university in Vienna. The design at that time proposed a massive cooling and ventilating roofscape. Since the complexity of this design worried everyone involved, in the next step, a more feasible project was developed, which consisted of a floorscape that integrated furniture built from clay with a steel structure for the roof covered with corrugated iron sheets. Existing and potential building materials were evaluated with a focus on ramped earth and earth block techniques. The aim was to translate vernacular and local construction methods into a contemporary architectural language. Aside from that, crucial decision-making focused on the question of how determined or how flexible the floorscape, with or without integrated furniture, should be, and consequently how goods would be displaced and how one would interact and navigate the market. The construction design and detailing was developed using digital and physical models. This allowed the team to simulate a variety of parameters, such as the structural behavior of the unique roof structure, also in response to environmental factors such as wind. Another important aspect of the physical models was the ability to communicate the appearance and complex geometry of the project to the larger team of stakeholders, consultants, and builders that were involved. The steel structure of the new Globalliga market was fabricated in a welding workshop in Tamala, which is like the larger regional town, and transported to Globalliga 2 hours away, where it then was assembled. Stencils and one-to-one drawings assisted welders in the workshops to manually craft the plates, beams, and profiles that made up the irregular and complex structure. All these works were continuously supervised by an alternating AFA team of 2 to 4 people. After completion, the steel construction was transferred to the site and lifted from the ground. The structure was basically built from top to bottom due to its geometrical complexity. To avoid problems resulting from inaccuracies in the positioning of columns, welded elements of steel beams were lifted from the ground and assembled in the air. The foundations for the columns were only casted at the very end of this procedure, which you can see best in this foundation plan. The completed steel structure was sprayed to prevent corrosion before the rainy season began in June 2019, and before it was covered with metal roofing sheets. That was also the moment when one could fully experience the structure. During the next phase, the market platforms were built, including 2 ramps and a water place. Due to the lack of funds and supervision time, the completion of the market with its cone-like shop and seating area was postponed to 2020. For the same reason, we also needed to build the cone-like shop from ordinary cement blocks instead of earth, as previously planned. Additional extension zones surrounding the market platform were designed and built to allow for the setting up of informal scenarios involving outside traders, and also to stabilize and landscape the direct market surrounding. The newly elected village market board pushed the additional implementation of a sanitary block and a market waste area to ensure a functioning market life. We also completed that beginning of March, or let's say end of February this year. The project was built with local labor and professionals, relying on the proficiencies of project partners ranging from architectural design expertise to local masons and welders, skilled and unskilled laborers, women, to the network of local architects and development partners that are needed for a sustainable project such as this one. The project was not conceived as a design build, but rather a way to engage diverse people and partners that foster a local and regional network of experts. The construction has provided income-generating opportunities for people in the community itself, among which unemployment during the off-farming season is high. By realizing ambitious geometries and construction techniques, the project has also pushed boundaries in the local construction environment. I also want to mention that working in a place such as Globuliga implies the necessity of working in a reactive and slowed-down manner. It is very much about time and presence and continuity. Thereby, one's own presence needs to correspond with the given rhythm of daily life, the local culture, and available resources. As architects and researchers, we are always coming from outside and we are always operating within tight time frames, which is potential but is also very limiting. Hardly ever do we speak or operate from within or over extensive periods of time, even more so when coming from far. Therefore, we always need to ask ourselves, what does it mean to plan and design from and for a specific territory? How to address environmental topics and social challenges, privileging the idea that change and development should occur internally. And what is the shared space of artistic and architectural research, community and place in this context? So I will close here now, and I'm happy to receive questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baerbel. It's super interesting. Lecture. And it's actually hitting. Regard to all the country which has also emergency crisis, like also Syria. So it's super important. Information is super important knowledge for us. Now, if someone have a question, please ask. Guys, someone here. Karsten.
Can I ask you about the costs from this project?
So the thing is, as I mentioned, that this was happening in collaboration with an NGO which is based in Austria and in Ghana. And so it was like that, the trips of this very small team of students to Ghana were financed by our university, and the project itself was funded or financed by the NGO, which collected the funds both in Austria and Ghana, obviously more successfully in Austria, and the total sum of this project is around 30,000 euros. So actually, it was, you might have seen it in the one slide where I showed a previous version of the project. The intention initially was to have a multitude of roofs, and it was also on a bigger scale in the initial design phase. So we needed to respond to the financial constraints at one point.
Thank you. Maybe I couldn't hear you correctly about the time. How does how long did it take this project to build it? So
we started in December, so it's so the lab is working a bit acyclic to the studio curriculum of the yearly 2 semesters. So we started in December 2017, and that was all these mapping exercises in Vienna, and then there was a team of 6 students going with me to Ghana in February 2018, and then back in Vienna there was this first intense design phase until July 2018, and then no, sorry, 19. And then I'm confused now with the years, but how it continued was that 2 students went back to Ghana. That was more like privately funded to investigate earth architecture and local construction methods. And so that was in September, and then the following year we started, which was 2019, in January, building it. And as you've seen, this prefabrication in Tamale was pretty labor intense, like the whole steel construction, and therefore we left to Austria and came back then to implement it in the village itself.
Very cool. Thank you very much for the informative lecture. Thank you.
One question, just a quick one. Thank you for your presentation. It was really interesting, and I like your project pretty much. Just one question to the structure. The foundation you just did it at last because of the imperfection in the steel construction, so it would correspond well to the structure, or was that the reason why you did it in the end?
Yeah, I mean, as you've seen in this one slide, like I've been working with earth in Ghana before. I also had a student lab where we built with bamboo at the coast in Ghana, which is a quite impressive dome structure. And this was basically my first steel construction in Ghana. And steel is I mean, if it comes to steel, as you know, it's about millimeters. And the working skills or level of precision in Ghana is rather limited, and therefore we knew we would completely fail. As you can see in the slide, which is still up, there is no single column which is like in a 90-degree angle, and it was clear that it would cause immense or it would have repercussions on the whole thing if there would be columns located not really precisely, and then we would come up with this ready-made primary structure of the roof, which then wouldn't fit, and therefore we decided to do it the other way around, which was quite complicated, but it worked out well.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, I have only a question also. First of all, I would like to express my admiration of the project, the simplicity, functionality, and the beauty of the structure. I really like it. Also, when you were discussing with officials about the structure, were their opinions influenced the outcome with regard to materials or aesthetical or geometrical aspects?
Maybe I should start a bit differently. When you ask for the choice of materials, it was pretty clear that steel is the only option. Also in regards to sustainability, I've been working with wood before in Ghana, and there is, I mean, all the good tropical wood is exported, and so you have a very bad quality of wood. And it's also, you also have a challenging climate with the humidity, and also a very super dry season and a very rainy season. So therefore there was hardly any alternative than working with steel. And it was, I mean, that's also, it's not my design, it's the design of my students. And I, in the design process, I really pushed hard to focus more on the floorscape and on the furniture. But they really were very ambitious in going for this quite complex roof structure, which of course responds to the vernacular architectural language, but is also a bit demanding. And as I mentioned, it was a back and forth between physical models and software such as Caramba. And there was also like some, I had amazing colleagues such as Klaus Bollinger as a structural engineer who supported this. structurally engineering part of the design process.
Okay, thank you so much.
So maybe we will be continue.
Maybe if someone like no one like have a question, so we can. Thank you, Barbara, again. Like super interesting lecture.